welcome to Essence TV. I'm Kari, Seeley. Over the next half hour, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about the issue of poverty, and particularly about an organisation partnering with local communities to empower them to change their lives from the inside out, to break the cycle, to give those communities the tools to change their world. You know, the photos and stories that we see on the evening news often can confirm that one person can make no change in the world. But tonight we're going to hear an amazing story of one Australian midwife who decided the power of one was worth pursuing. Our conversation today is about hope and help and the power of one. Now, my first guest has had 20 years more than 20 years experience in international community development. He's currently studying for his master's in that area, and he's a board member of an organisation called the 2H Project. Kevin Taylor, it's a delight to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kari.
Now, Kevin, let's have a look at the 2H Project. What is it?
Well, that's a great question. We never thought that the name would raise so much interest. 2H simply stands for Hope and Help. You've already mentioned that. It's an Australian-based, local, Adelaide-based organisation, and we work in the nation of Cambodia. Mm-hmm. That's our primary area of focus at the moment, and Cambodia is a close neighbour to Australia. And for many people, they would already know that Cambodia has a recent history of suffering and of all sorts of difficulties that they've faced over the last 30 years. Yeah.
Almost 2 million people died under the Pol Pot regime. What connected 2H with Cambodia?
Well, really, that was my wife originally decided that she was what would I say, slightly bored with being a house mum. And she was, I guess, you know, how many times we watch television and we see the images from third world or developing nations and we're challenged by those. She was a bit fed up of being challenged and not doing anything. And so she decided to go with a group of girlfriends to Cambodia back in 1999. And they went over there, and of course it was a country that was redeveloping. There was no end of need. In fact, the need was quite overwhelming. And I imagined, as her husband, that she would go there, get it out of her system, and come back, and life would go back to normal. Wasn't the case. She got bitten by the bug and has continued on developing the 2H project, yeah.
Now, I guess there's plenty of people in Australia who would go and travel in the third world and be challenged, moved with compassion to do something, but then come home and slip back into normal. Why was it different for Kate? What happened?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. It just really seemed to grab Kate's heart, and particularly on the first trip. When she was over there, Kate tells the story, I think you mentioned in your introduction, about the power of one. And Kate was moved by one little child that she had in her arms in an orphanage that died while she was holding the baby in her arms. Two things went through Kate's mind when that happened. One was the child didn't ask whether Kate was qualified or not. At that stage, Kate had no qualifications. She's now a midwife. But back then she was a house mum. She looked after the kids and she stayed at home, and she did a great job of that. So yeah, the child didn't ask whether she was qualified or not. And the second thought was that she might not be able to change the world, but she made a difference for one person's life. Yeah. And just loved that child while it died in her arms. So that had, I guess, a profound effect on her life. And when she came back to Australia, and when she came back to Adelaide, she just couldn't ignore that. And knew that there was other children out there too, who similarly could have somebody hold them in their arms when they were going through such a terrible time.
So I guess the connection initially was for doing something to help children. The 2H project is broader than just helping children, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Of course, we're used to seeing the faces of children when it comes to third world nations and developing nations. But there's a lot of, I guess, different threads that come together to create poverty for children. And so we have taken, as a development organisation, taken a particular approach that tries to keep children and their families together tries to do something sort of more upstream rather than way downstream.
Right.
And to, as it were, set a fence at the top of the mountain rather than a hospital at the bottom of it. So orphans and children that suffer the effects of poverty is a huge need. But if we can do something that stops them from getting to that place in the first instance, then that's...
So there are 4 main areas that you guys are working in at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is called Safe Arrivals. Just
Correct.
briefly tell us about that.
Okay. So after Kate's first trip, when she went in 1999, she came back and, cut a long story short, she always jokes about that she was, when she went, she wasn't qualified, but she had her first aid certificate, and she used to watch ER. And that was her qualification. So she had a bit of a medical bent. She came back to Australia and trained to become a midwife. So became a midwife, got her degree in that. And so the Safe Arrivals project is directly linked to that. Safe Arrivals is the training of traditional birth attendants. In Cambodia, 90% of all births are attended by a traditional birth attendant. So because the country is largely rurally and remotely based, TBAs are the first person on hand, or the attendant at a woman having their child.
And sometimes that could just be someone who's kind of arbitrarily nominated in the community rather than someone who has qualifications.
Yeah. Oftentimes it's actually handed down from grandma to mum to the next child. So it's a job that's in the family.
So Safe Arrivals, helping children arrive safely in the world.
Correct.
Another aspect of 2H project is Sight for Life.
Yeah, Sight for Life is a project when Kate was in Cambodia one time. She met a lady who had a bad eye condition. Kate assumed it was conjunctivitis, gave her some cream, said that'll fix it and come back and see me in a couple of days. The problem didn't go away, and so Kate assumed it to be a cataract, and she made a promise to the lady she would come back to Australia and research it and find somebody that would help. And when she did that, she said, well, if I'll do it for 1, then I'll do it for 100. And to date, we've conducted over 6,500 cataract surgeries.
Wow.
And 20,000 village screenings.
Amazing, fantastic. Well, it's certainly very inspiring stuff, and when we come back we're going to find out about the other 2 aspects of the work of 2H and also how people can get involved. So when we come back, talking more about 2H and chatting with Kevin Taylor. Don't go away, this is Essence TV.